we're going to have a few review problems today where you're going to be in a group to solve these. And I am going to start by giving you the classic ball gets thrown up problem. Let's keep it at 2 meters because that's the same as the lab, right? And I'm not telling you this spot. And I'm not telling you even the time that the ball hit the ground. Because for the problem I'm about to give you, you won't need to know that. But do you know, if I told you the speed that you threw the ball up was 10 meters per second, do you know where to put that in the master formula? Do you even know what the master formula is? If you don't, write it down. F of x, which is, by the way, like y, which is in this case, the number of what? Chickens? Cows? What the heck is f of x? It's the height, and it's in meters. Yes, it's the height off the ground. And the other direction, it's time, which is the x, right? So the y, which is the height, which goes here, is negative 4.9, and that's the gravitational piece, and it's in meters. That's why we have to use meters here. And then it's, I used x before, but I'm going to use t this time just to show you it doesn't have to be x, okay? T squared. Plus vt, what do you think v stands for? Velocity, which I already told you. In this case, it'll be 10. Plus the starting height, let's stick to the 2 meters. Remember, whatever your starting height is goes there. This number goes there. Now you got an equation, and I just told you something you could stick in the equation. Except I need to tell you one more thing, or you won't have enough info. Do you get you're going to put the 10 here? Why isn't this enough info? Well, because you got a t and you got a y. You either have to give me t, and I could figure out y, or I have to give you y, and you can figure out t. The easier one is if I just tell you t. If I told you time was like 2 seconds, don't do it, but if I did, do you get it be super easy? And it would just be y equals all that. You'd stick a 2 in. Remember, this is not a z down here. It looks too much like a z. I'm making it into a better 2 here. Okay, so you'd put in your time of, let's say, 3 seconds. You could put it here in the t's. But that's not what I'm doing here today. I'm going to instead give you the harder problem, which is I want the height to be 9 feet would be more like 3 meters. I'm going to say that if you threw it up from 2 meters, unless you're a super wimp, it hit 3 meters. You know, it went up a little bit. I know some of you really tossed it very weakly, which is fine. But in this scenario, you threw it at 10 meters per second, it's going to have passed over a height of 3 meters. So my question is, did it ever cross 3 meters? Which, by the way, if you solve it and there's no solution, that means it didn't ever cross 3 meters. Maybe the throw wasn't strong enough to go across 3 meters. Or B, if it does cross 3 meters, usually it's going to cross twice, like this. Once on the way up, and then once again on the way down. That's why you'd have 2 answers. And if you're like, I don't know how to solve that, well, don't forget that if you can factor it, you should. But does this look like a great candidate for factoring or completing the square? No, because of that negative 4.9, those aren't good. So if I was finding the vertex, which is not what I asked, if I was finding the vertex, I would want a calculator to be able to do negative b over 2a. Or in this case, if I'm finding the answers, I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so would you please do that? And you're going to have a partner to do it. And then you're going to need a calculator. Now, there's a few people that don't have a calculator. If you're lucky enough that your calculator, actually, let's not do it that way. Everybody get a calculator out. If you don't have one yourself, pull it up on single sign-on. In my Schoology, in the yellow folder that's inside the yellow folder, the welcome folder has a calculator folder in it. You'll need the calculator for another problem here, and then you're going to solve this one, which I'm going to call problem 1. The next problem is problem 2, and I'm going to give you all of them right now, so please write them all down. That first one, that was problem 1. Here's problem 2, and that is if I give you x is going to be time, and y is going to be the distance. If I give you data like this, you should be able to make a regression equation. And I'm going to give you time 1, 2, 3, and 4. And your distance that the ball will have gone is going to be 14, 16, 18, and 20. Use that data to write me a regression equation for it. And then answer this question. If the time had been 0.2, what would the distance have been? Okay, so that's question 2. That's going to involve a regression equation. And again, everybody's responsible to either have a calculator out or B, use your iPad to pull up the one in the yellow folder on my Schoology site. Don't forget, got to be single sign-on to do it. And the last question is number 3. And that one is x squared minus 8x is less than or equal to 9. And my question is, what's the solutions? And whenever you see this, you should know, oh, I should make a number line because there's going to be a whole range of solutions. Now, this one's going to work nice because I made it so it would factor. But if it wouldn't, you can factor it? You should. Otherwise, you solve with the quadratic formula. You could solve the same problem if it wasn't factoring with the quadratic formula. And if you just want to practice that to just remember the quadratic formula, do it. Then the final answer is again on a number line. So like let's say it's between 2 and 10, then you have an answer like that and everybody's happy. Yes?
The second question.
Yep.
When you get the LinReg as a graphic calculator?
Yes, this would you'd use LinReg.
But how do you know, is A or B, what do those correspond to for that X?
This is L1, this is L2. Okay. And this T, that's a time, so that's like an L1. Is that enough info or do you need more?
B the y-intercept?
Is B the y-intercept? Okay, so this is, when you do LinReg, you have the slope here and the y-intercept there. Okay, so when you do your calculator, the calculator will spit out this equation for you if you know how to do it. Okay, you can always work with your partner on that too. All right, so there's your 3 tough questions. Now we have some time to work with the partner, and then we will solve them. Pausing. Okay, I think it's time that I give you some help because we have kind of shorter classes today. So let's make sure you got what was going on here. Well, first of all, f of x is the y. Okay, and the y is the height. And the height here is 3. So I'm going to put the 3 here. Then I have a quadratic that has everything in it except t, and so I can solve for t. So the first step was to subtract 3 from both sides. I heard some groups telling me they were doing that, so that's good. And then you have 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And now it equals 0, and that's what you have to have. Otherwise, you can't solve quadratics unless they're equal to 0. And then if you can factor it, you should, but this is too gross to factor. So then you're talking a quadratic formula. So x equals negative b, which in this case is negative 10, plus and minus the square root. And then I'm not going to do all of it. You should know this formula, and you should have done it with a decimal here with your calculator, and then got the 2 answers, one of which is incredibly small. Think about why. Why would the x, which is the time, be incredibly small? Because you were 2 meters off the ground when you threw it. So it's going to get to 3 meters super quick. All right, so your first time ought to have been really small. Jada, what did you guys get for your first time? Point
1054.
Can anybody verify 105-ish? Okay, let's just go with that. And that's
That's right.
a tenth of a second. No, I think it's right. And it makes sense. Think about how fast it would go up. You're at already 2. You're throwing it up at 10 meters per second. So 0.105, and where the rounding would happen, you'd have to ask me on the test. It'll probably say what to round to. Okay, and then what's the other end? Well, a couple seconds later, it's coming back down again. And so you get the other number. Nick, what did you guys get?
I was so confused on that one.
Boo. Okay, let's go with Nick Voves. Did you guys figure it out?
Oh, yeah, 1.934.
Anybody verify 1.93-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so that was using the quadratic formula. You'll have to be able to do something like that. And how is it like our lab? Well, just because you're using the same exact equation, it's just you're using this spot. And at that spot, it's actually super simple. You know the what and the what. At this spot, the height, which is what? 0, and you know the time that that height happened because you got it from your data. All right. Okay, enough hints on the lab. Let's go on to number 2. On this one, I made it pretty easy because it's just going up 2 each time. Do you get that means that it's going to be a 2 here? That makes sense. All right, so what did you actually get for that? Oh, and y equals 2x plus?
Y equals 2x plus 12.
12. Can anybody verify 2x plus 12? Okay, good. Then, what do we actually want to get from that? Well, what if we had time equals 0.2? We got to look at what time was. Time was like the L1, which is like the x. So it's over here. And effectively, I'm saying that I just gave you a x by telling you t, the time. Time is usually the x variable, and it is in this case. So time is 0.2. Well, then it'd be something between the y-intercept of 12 and then the 14. So it's probably between 12 and 14. Who has an answer that's between 12 and 14? Okay, Jada, what'd you guys get?
12.4.
Anybody verify 12.4? Lots of yeses. Okay, good. So that was 12.4. Okay, so if you don't know how to do the lin-reg thing, you got to ask me before you leave today. And last but not least is this one. I set this one up so it would factor. Now, just think for a moment if I hadn't set it up to factor. Like if this had been 9.6, you wouldn't have been able to factor it, right? How would you get the answers? Quadratic formula, that's what the quadratic formula is good for. It solves quadratics, see? But this one, if you can factor it, you should. X minus 9 plus 1. Did I do it right? Then do you think the key numbers are -1 and 9? And do those key numbers actually work themselves? If you put 9 in, I want you to just think this through. Why is 9 working? Because it equals 0, and 0 is equal to 0. So that's why 9 works. I fill it in, and then was it between them or outside of them? Between them. And how do you know it's between them?
Plug in a number between them and see if it works.
All right, what's a number that's between them? 0 is, and that's the easiest number of them all, because then I put in a 0 here and here, then it's just -9 is less than 0. That seems like it's true. I'm going to think it through. Is -9 really less than 0? Yes, it definitely is. So it worked, so I shade here. And then it does not work out here or here, and you don't have to cross them off, but I like to make it clear I've checked them. And if I really, really, really wanted to check, I could put in 10 and just see if it actually works, and it's not supposed to. If I put in a 10 here and a 10 here, I get positive 10 and positive 11 multiplied makes, let me think, 10 minus 9 is 1. 1 times 11 is not less than 0, so that doesn't work. So I checked 10, and it for sure doesn't work. All right, there's my answer between -1 and 9. Now, is that everything that could be on the test? Absolutely not. But I have a quiz, a little practice quiz that you guys could work on together. I would save well, I don't care which one you guys want to do, but there's 2 Schoology quizzes for today. One of them's the 10 functions that you're supposed to have memorized. And the other one is problems that are kind of like the ones you just did, except maybe a little easier. All right, because those are pretty tough ones. So go do whichever Schoology quiz you guys agree to do together, and then the rest of it is your homework. One of them is super easy, but maybe you'd rather get that done right now. I don't know.
Are they resumable?
They're resumable, yes. All right, that's all I have for the video for today.